Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul and hopefully you're having an amazing day. There's been a lot of discussion over the last several months concerning hardware shortages. CPUs, GPUs from both AMD and Nvidia. Well, Nvidia of course for the GPUs, not the CPUs. Although that may be changing. See yesterday's exclusive with Nvidia's plans to let's say, dethrone x86 in the gaming arena with ARM-based processors. And for the consoles, of course, both the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series systems, despite the fact that they've sold millions of units, have also had supply chain issues. And yeah, so I want to tackle this in two ways from the AMD and Nvidia side. We'll start things out first of all with AMD. And apparently, a lot of the supply constraints that we've seen with Radeon GPUs is actually to do with console ramp-up in terms of production. For those who don't know, while AMD are the ones who are designing, say, the Zen 3-based processors, it is actually the job of TSMC to manufacture the chips, as AMD are now fabless, i.e. unlike Intel who have their own foundries to manufacture the chips, AMD utilize TSMC to do this for them on the 7nm process. And the consoles, as well as Zen 3 and RDNA 2 based GPUs, all use the 7nm process along with AMD's legacy products such as Zen 2 and the first generation of RDNA. And there is a really interesting report that is doing the rounds which gives us an idea of how many wafers the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox series of systems are actually gobbling up from TSMC. Full credit, by the way, to Nerd Tech on Twitter for this discovery. It's very interesting. And the report he's quoting is from CT, that's ctee.com.tw. So, according to their information anyway, in Q4, AMD is set to use up to 120,000 wafers for console SoCs. So that's 80,000 for the PlayStation 5 and 40,000 for the Xbox series of systems. This is about 80% of the 7nm wafers allocated to AMD in that period. Now, you can also look at that report yourself, and indeed, the ramp-up has increased. AMD have actually asked TSMC for even more supply, and that's increased by about 15%. And furthermore, and there's another report, I was doing some digging, and this dates back to September of 2020, and this is from the website DigiTimes. They claim that we're looking at about 140,000 wafers that TSMC can produce, although bear in mind that is total capacity for TSMC's fabs. And further to all of this, there's another report that there's between 13 or 14,000 units which AMD have secured additional. This was again back in about September time of this year, and this was thanks to MediaTek no longer utilizing the TSMC 7nm production because of Huawei. Obviously, you know, there was that whole thing with the US regulations, so AMD quickly were like, nom, 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 thank you for that capacity. And apparently the bulk of this, and again, this report was from several months ago, the bulk of that went to the PlayStation 5 as well as the Xbox to help make sure that the market were able to get the consoles that they wanted. But if you want even more of a damning evidence of just how short of supply the RX 6000 series was, and this is something that I've been discussing for a while now. I knew for a fact that the RX 6000 series in the future, the supply is going to be much better. Again, for those who missed my earlier videos, I was hearing like late December and certainly Q1 of next year, supply is going to be much better. But initially I was told that the AIB custom cards were going to have better supply, but then I quickly learned that no, that's not the case, at least initially. Once the cards kind of go a few months into the future, yes, that will be the case, that AMD are going to allocate most of the wafer production for RDNA 2 for custom cards, but initially there is going to be massive shortages of the RX 6000, both for the standard reference design, but also for the custom cards. And despite the fact that some folks are saying that Ampere had even more shortages than RDNA 2, it's not, and there is actually some evidence of this. The retailer ProShop has actually released some of their numbers, and credit, by the way, to computerbase.de for this. You will need to utilize, unless you speak language natively, you will need to use Google Translate, but you can at least get an idea just using Google Translate of the numbers. And they have the numbers for both the 6800 and 6800 XTs, and I won't read out all of them because, well, yeah, I think the images speak for themselves. And you can see that the orders in some cases were in the thousands, and they received, in the case of the 6800, for example, a whole 100 units. The 6800 XT, well, it wasn't that much better. And again, they received only a small fraction of the units that they had put orders in. And this is, of course, also very closely mirrored by comments from Overclockers UK, for example, who said that they didn't want the customers to basically, break down their doors and riot, blaming Overclockers UK when it wasn't their fault. The the supply, wasn't there. And so for them to put the cards on sale when there's 2 cards or something ridiculous, it's just pointless. So they just basically had them as window shopping only. You can look, you just can't buy them yet until they have enough supply. Furthermore, I was told in certain cases there were just a handful of custom cards available, think a dozen in some cases, and that's not per shop, just to be clear. We're talking total in a region. So this gives you an idea of just how short of a supply there was for the RX 6000 series. And I personally believe that the custom cards, at the very least, should have been postponed. The launch of them should have been made maybe Q1 or late this year, although it's already almost December at this point. But it is what it is. And yeah, it's just basically capacity issues and supply issues. And you have to also remember that ramp up takes time. When you're talking about production of a GPU, you can't just be like, well, I want to increase capacity an extra 50%. It doesn't work like that. Even if you have the capacity to actually manufacture the ASICs, or GPU cores, whatever you want to say, you have to also secure the memory which is used and other components on the PCB and GPU, the coolers, basically the entire bill of materials of the GPU or PlayStation 5 or whatever. And then further to that, it takes time to ramp all of this up. Even if magically you can just press a button and this stuff is manufactured for you and you have all of those, it still takes quite a long time to assemble them and then actually ship them. So the ramp-up times for GPUs, especially early in production, could be 12 to 16 weeks, which obviously is quite a while. And I'm not just going to rag on AMD in this video, I'm also going to poke at Nvidia. The Ampere launch has been arguably better than AMD, although I would say that it's like me saying to you, well, you know what, I'm going to kick you in the shin. But it's better than me pushing you down the stairs first. So it's better, right? It still sucks. The good news is for Nvidia, at least, the production is starting to improve. I mean, it has been available now for months. Technically, the cards have been launched, so, well done. But the RTX 3070 is now becoming more available, and the RTX 3090 is kind of available. There are actually reports that I'm seeing that, you can have 3070s in pre-built systems now, and in some cases they're not even selling out within 13 seconds. All of that is positive. So there is a report which stems from Barron's, although it's also circulating on other websites. And the long story short is that Nvidia apparently, despite their record profits recently, a large number of Ampere graphics cards allegedly went to miners. Now, there is a lot to say about this, but it's almost $200 million worth of product, which you can imagine the sheer number of cards that this is. And yeah, it's a very interesting thing, and I'm sure it's going to frustrate a lot of people. And believe me, I understand the frustration. So this comes down to the fact that Ethereum, the new currency, and I'm not exactly well versed in mining, so please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, or give me a DM or something like that as to why this is. But the long story short is that Ampere is allegedly a lot better at mining this new currency. So I did some digging and asking around, and from what I can see, it really comes down to a couple of things. Now, if you've been watching the channel for a while, you'll know that I've said frequently that the demand for Ampere is ridiculous. I've actually heard that it outstripped the traffic on some websites of the Black Friday sales of previous years, obviously not this year. So to give you an idea, the demand is multiple times higher than what we saw with Turing. And this is for a plethora of different reasons. It's not for a singular reason. But I think you can just imagine that, you know, having a card like the 3080, for example, at the price it is, easily outperforming the RTX 2080 Ti. At the time, AMD did not have a viable alternative in the high end. It had much better ray tracing performance, all of this stuff. And the fact that, honestly, Turing, I wouldn't say it was bad. I think Turing actually got a bit of an unfair rap, but Turing was definitely like a beta version of what we see with Ampere. Like, Ampere takes everything that Turing had and then just turns it up, cranks it up, and fixes all of the problems. And by this point as well, we now, of course, have the consoles with ray tracing. So I think that people were just hungry at this point to move from Pascal. And honestly, if you had something like a GTX 1080 Ti and you are not someone who just wants to play around with things, like for me, I just get bugged by not having a setting that I can enable. It doesn't matter how useless the setting is. It doesn't matter how many games support it. It just irks me. And so, you know, for someone like me, I can definitely understand the interest, but for, you know, for a lot of folks, a GTX 1080 Ti or even a 1070 or something like that, absolutely great. But now we've got high resolution screens and all of this other stuff that's been kind of coming its way to the market. Variable refresh rate TVs as well, with thanks to HDMI 2.1. So I think it's just the perfect storm of this demand. So I think what happened, and I'm digging a little bit in industry sources, and I'm not saying this is 100% accurate. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if I'm wrong, but this is just my take on it based on the information we have. So I'm fairly certain that the report here with Nvidia selling all of these cards to miners is accurate. But to what I can understand, it seems that these deals have been in place for a long time with Nvidia, and more to the point, the AIB partners. And you have to remember too that the cards which are being sold to miners are not necessarily the RTX 3080 Founders Edition. In many cases, they're specifically designed around the needs of mining, or they may not even have display ports or something like that. This is not to say all of them fall in this under this category. So I think what's happened is that these deals have been in place, and then the demand for Ampere was super duper high for gamers. In fact, I believe that it was higher than even Nvidia, anticipated. And then on top of all of that, we've had the just ridiculousness, of course, of scalping, and of course the current world events with, the cough. And I think all of this stuff has just come together to create the perfect storm. And it sucks, honestly. I'm very glad that we are starting to see, we're kind of at the peak now, or getting to the peak of the shortage of Ampere. We're not there. I don't think it's going to be until early next year that we start to really hit the point where you can just be like, la 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 la, and walk into a store and pick one up without any problems. But we are doing better. And that's something. But yeah, the frustration is there. I mean, I'm waiting for a couple of products myself. Like I mentioned it multiple times on the channel, I'm trying to get 5900X, and like the position in queue is just like, it's crawling. It's ridiculous. Even trying to get review samples on some products is difficult. But anyway, it is what it is, right? While I'm on the subject of Nvidia, one other small thing: the RTX 3080 20GB might be alive. This has actually been spotted on videocards.com, so full credit to them. Long story short, there is an EEC filing from MSI for an RTX 3080, Paul, 3080, but not a couple of years ago, 3080 20GB model. And so this card is something that we knew existed, and then we thought was dead, and now could be alive again, so question mark. To my understanding, it was only ever going to be the 10GB model for the Founders Edition card, but AIBs like MSI or EVGA or whatever could make the 20GB card, but then Nvidia, wow, I'm having one of those days, aren't I? Nvidia basically told AIBs, nope, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to release the 10GB model, and we're going to focus on the RTX 3080 Ti. And the rumour is that that's going to launch in like January, February. I'm hearing January for the RTX 3080 Ti. And it's the 3080 Ti, that is basically the same thing as the RTX 3090, albeit with the bus and memory capacity cut down slightly. So we're looking at 20GB of memory rather than 24GB of memory. But the CUDA core count essentially remains identical. That's what the rumour is anyway. It's possible that MSI have just put this filing in because it's automated, or they're doing it as a just cause, or maybe it really is going to launch. Who knows? It should, in theory, though, perform basically identical to the RTX 3080. There is no difference in the number of CUDA cores, at least we don't believe. Memory clock frequencies, all of that stuff is identical, at least unless there's been like a change since we last heard. So it seems like the only difference is the amount of RAM, which probably won't make any real difference in the vast majority of titles, but I'm just reporting it because. Anyway, I think that's just about it for this particular video. Hopefully you have enjoyed it. I will see you soon, hopefully. If you have enjoyed the video, of course, subscribe to the channel and also click the bell icon, and I'll see you soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.